Hey guys, welcome to another movie review. Today I'm going to be talking about the new Darren Aronofsky film Mother. I'm a huge fan of Darren Aronofsky. I love the film Black Swan. I'm still kind of haunted to this day by his film Requiem for a Dream, which is definitely meant to haunt audiences with its drug addiction depiction that very much scarred me scarred my own life to this day. Definitely never doing drugs after seeing that movie, after seeing just how scary drug addiction can be. I've seen The Wrestler. I'm kind of mixed upon that one. I know a lot of people really like The Wrestler. I'm kind of mixed on this one. But in this new film, Mother, it's definitely more along the line of an indie Darren Aronofsky film. I think it's one of his smaller budget movies. And it focuses on a young couple played by Jennifer Lawrence and Javier Bardem, and they live out in this house out in the middle of a field somewhere. It's a very nice house. It's a very nice environment that they're living in, and it's very quiet out there. They have a lot of time and space to themselves. Jennifer Lawrence's character is kind of arranging a house, repainting the walls, adding new designs to the rooms, trying to make it a more comfy, more livable place. Trying to make the rooms suitable for children if this couple ever has children. Javier Bardem's character is a writer who focuses on poems and poetry and stories, and he's kind of going through writer's block, really doesn't know what to do with his next story or next poem, so he's trying to figure out what direction he's going to go in, what he's going to write about. It's all peaceful and quiet until a house guest arrives one night at their house. And this man claims to be a huge fan of Javier Bardem's work. What's kind of unique about this movie, too, is these characters don't really have names. Not a single character in this movie has an exact name. So, like, for example, my name is Tom. These characters don't have names like that. They're simply addressed as mother or him or house guest or house guest number two and so forth. So these characters don't really have names, which is kind of interesting about this movie. But anyway, this house guest claims to be a huge fan of Javier Bardem's work, and he's very honored about this. He kind of just lets this man kind of live in this house as if it's his own home, and make yourself at home and all that kind of stuff. Things go on. He's trying to kind of break the rules. He's trying to smoke in the house, drink in the house, party in the house, and so forth. And eventually gets to the point where his wife comes to the house, and now she wants to stay in the home too. And now the man's two sons wants to stay in this house. So it basically just gets really out of hand. Javier Bardem just randomly creates this rule amongst himself and his wife that they can basically invite all these guests over as much as they want. He claims that he's trying to live up the house a little bit more, make it more lively and so forth. Jennifer Lawrence's character is really not into this. She's really uncomfortable. These guests are really out of control. They have huge family problems. There's an issue going on with the Ed Harris's character and so forth. So basically, as the film progresses, these people try to invite even more guests over to this house. And of course, Javier Bardem is just kind of inviting them all in. Jennifer Lawrence is really not okay with all this. All these things happen. The Jennifer Lawrence character and Javier Bardem, they're still trying to arrange their marriage, still figure out if they want children and so forth. And as these decisions are made, as these house guests are creating even more trouble for this couple, things get worse, and a huge fiasco happens at this house over the course of several days. And that's about the most I can say without giving away anything about this movie that's really huge and specific. So overall, guys, Mother I thought was a good film. I think there's things about Mother that are really good, and I think there's a lot of things about Mother that are really not so good. So I'm kind of in between on this movie. I think there's things that are really enjoyable about it and things that really aren't so great about it. So I think some people are really going to be split on this movie. There is a lot of unsettling, unpleasant imagery in this movie, just to forewarn you. So if you've seen Requiem for a Dream, if you really were turned off by the brutal imagery in that movie, Mother is definitely another Darren Aronofsky film that does do this as well, so just be forewarned. There's a lot of images here that were shown that I was shocked that were shown in an R-rated film like this, just like in Requiem for a Dream. So just beware that Darren Aronofsky doesn't hold anything back in this movie. If he wants to show you something, he will show it to you whether you like it or not. He does not hold back in this movie, just to forewarn you again. So for my positives and negatives of Mother, I do like its intriguing messages about religion, politics, and good and evil. Believe it or not, all these messages are covered in this movie. So, like I said, certain characters represent certain ideas in this movie, and that's about as much as I can say without giving it away or without ruining a possible interpretation that you, as the viewer, might also have on this movie. Because I certainly interpreted certain things differently than the friend I saw this movie with, and so forth. But yeah, there's a lot of really intriguing messages about like religion, kind of how it's both a good and a bad thing on people, how politics kind of is a very divisive thing, how certain people view things this way, certain people view things that way, how a Republican Party and a Democratic Party like to handle things better, kind of where people stand on things. And like I said, it's also about the balance of good and evil, how some people try to behave in the system, try to follow the rules and be likable amongst others, while while other people like to break the rules and not follow the rules, not follow the law. So this film covers all these different things, has all these kind of messages, and it's a very intriguing film as a result. And it definitely is a film that I guarantee will have you talking with other people who have seen this film long after the film is over with. This is also a very intense experience. The whole film is very tense. I was definitely on the edge of my seat the entire time. It definitely was not a dull moment in this movie. Rather, they're exploring something about the house, exploring something with one of the guests in this movie. Very, very tense experience with this movie. Very edge of your seat. So if you're looking for another Darren Aronofsky film that presents this, just like Requiem for a Dream, you won't be disappointed in that regard. I also like how the characters are ideas in this movie, rather than assigning characters with a name and an occupation and so forth. Some of these characters are revealed to have a certain occupation or a job, but for the most part, these characters are ideas in this movie. Jennifer Lawrence's character represents ideas. Javier Bardem's character does. So does Ed Harris. So does Michelle Pfeiffer. So does Domhnall Gleeson. All these characters represent different ideas in this movie. It's a very intriguing film as a result, and it's kind of interesting to decipher and interpret on your own, which characters represent those certain ideas. I also like the home invasion element of this movie. It's more so in Act 1 and Act 2 of this movie, but when the home invasion element happens, when Jennifer Lawrence is really trying to take control, get her house back, kick these people out of the house, try to create order amongst these people in this house, I was very intrigued. I was very invested. I was kind of interested to see kind of where Javier Bardem's character stood with all this. So I definitely was intrigued by the home invasion elements of this movie. So for Act 1 and Act 2 of that, I think the film works very well in that regard. I also like Darren Aronofsky's message on how the world is a mess. Kind of like there is an image in this movie where it's showing you what something looks like, and through a special effect, it's showing you kind of what people wish it would look like. And I think that's a very intriguing way that Darren Aronofsky views the world, where there's certain things that we wish were that we wish looked or sounded or was in a situation that we wish we were in, but it really is something that is more dark and depressing and real and sad. And I think Darren Aronofsky's trying to make the point that people like to put these drapes over certain things with we wish that everybody could have a home and could have good families and a good life and a good job, when in reality there's a lot of people who don't have good jobs and they aren't good people and they're doing bad things. And even though there's other people who are following the system and are doing good things and are having good jobs, there's a lot of people who aren't doing that. So I like how Aronofsky's making the point that sometimes it's important to make sure those drapes get raised and that we are seeing things that the way they are, not to just kind of put a drape over it and kind of ignore it and let it go, because then things will not get fixed. So I liked how his message of how the world is a mess and we kind of should do something about it. I also like the range and variety in both Javier Bardem's and Jennifer Lawrence's performance in this movie. Javier Bardem's character specifically I thought was very interesting. He definitely represented both God and Antichrist in many ways when it came to the religious themes. And Jennifer Lawrence's character, I think, definitely represents, nature and kind of how things are right and wrong, how order can be very easily thrown away, how out of control people can get. So there's just a lot of ideas that are shared and performed amongst these two performances specifically that I thought really made the film even more intriguing. For my negatives of Mother, though, I thought some of the messages in this film were taken way too literally, and this definitely happens more so in the third act when everything's kind of crunched up and put together and very quickly paced and trying to wrap itself up really fast. There's one scene specifically that I can't get into details on, but it's very brutal and graphic to watch. So this is definitely not a film for everybody, just because there are a lot of images in this film that I think are really going to upset a lot of people. But there are some messages I think are taken way too literally. They're either taken way too literally out of the context of a Bible, or the context of a political standpoint, or the context of, good and evil and so forth. So I thought Aronofsky, specifically towards the third act, got way too literal with some of the messages that he was trying to get across in this movie, and that's really too bad. I also thought Act 3 of this movie was just very messy and overstuffed. There's just way too many ideas thrown into it. It's very messy. It's kind of all over the place. It's just madness. I thought the third act of this film was just way too all over the place. It was very hard to follow by then in the story. Really could have used a better third act in this movie. I also thought Mother suffers from too many unlikable characters. There's just a lot of house guests that arrive at this house that if I were Jennifer Lawrence in the situation, I just would have kicked them out right there and then. They're rude. They don't follow the rules. They're just not likable people. You just do not want them in your house. And they, break stuff. They eat your food and all that stuff. Just the way these characters conducted and handled themselves around complete strangers was just like, I can't believe somebody would think that that's just okay to do. So there's just a lot of characters in this film that I really couldn't get behind. I really don't understand how Darren Aronofsky could have made at least some of these house guests a little bit more likable. So for me personally, there was just too many unlikable characters amongst the mist of interesting ideas, but maybe not in the most interesting characters. I also thought this film lost its believability after a while. After a while, okay, there's a couple of house guests here and there, but after a while, there's just so many of them, and so many of them are doing these crazy, absurd, supernatural things after a while. I just kind of lost believability in this film after a while, so that's something I thought that really hurt this movie. I also thought the overall house, specifically towards the third act again, it felt like a completely different house in the third act. I felt like I was watching some temple in a foreign country somewhere by the third act of this movie. This house just gets ripped apart and turned into things, and it's just like, let's get a consistent house, use that house during the entire runtime, and not make it feel like we're using 10 different houses for one setting of the movie. So overall, I'm going to give Mother an 8 out of 10. There's a lot of interesting, intriguing ideas about this film. It's an interesting film to talk about. But I really think there's a lot of messages here that were taken way too literally and too graphically. A very messy, overstuffed third act. Too many unlikable characters for my taste. It loses its believability after a while, and I really would have preferred a house that felt more consistent, that would have made more sense for the story that they were trying to go with. So 8 out of 10 for me. I enjoyed this film. It's not Aronofsky's best, but there is a lot of intriguing things about it that is worth that one view. So if you have the stomach for it, if you want to give it a try, if you like Aaron Aronofsky, I think it is worth a view.